Welcome back. It's just gone quarter to 5. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. You are tuned in to Salam Media with me, Humairaa Mayet, until 5 p.m. today, the 2nd of February 2021. Do remember that this segment is streaming live on our website, salammedia.com/listen live, and on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Salam Media. Remember to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Instagram at Salam Media _on air and on Twitter at Salam Media. All comments and questions can be sent to 061 766 0355 via WhatsApp. Fascism and other right wing ideologies, Nazism notwithstanding, are on the rise around the world, and many parallels can be drawn between these and the notion of Hindutva and Hindu nationalism as propagated by the BJP, India's ruling political party. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, not only is the BJP cracking down on Dalits, Muslims, and Sikhs, but farmers across the country too are facing several hardships following 3 farm laws passed last year. Small subsistence farmers are attempting to repeal these farm laws through many avenues, including protests and rallies. Today, we are joined by Raees Noorbhai, activist, writer, and organizer with South Africans Against Fascist India. Good afternoon and welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
So very broadly, Modi's entrance into office was characterized by a rise in Hindu nationalism across the country. This then gave way to the passing of the Citizenship Amendment Act, or the CAA-NRC. Could you briefly delve into this?
So the CAA and NRC came into effect, in December of 2019, we protested against the CAA and NRC. And so the Citizenship Amendment Act in the National Register of Citizens effectively places millions of people at risk of becoming stateless by allowing for a path to citizenship for migrants from the Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, Christian faiths and so on, but conspicuously leaves out Muslims. And so leaves millions of Indian Muslims at risk of becoming stateless, at risk of losing their citizenship and potentially being sent to detention camps. The other thing was about providing documentation about historical ancestry to India to be added to the National Register of Citizens. And of course, it's not just Muslims that have this issue, it's Dalits as well, and poorer Indians who don't necessarily have this documentation. And so what we have is what Arundhati Roy said with the CAA and NRC is that it turns citizens into petitioners towards the state. Basically asking for their citizenship from the state, who has the right now to deny that right to citizenship. And this is one step as part of the agenda that is the fascist agenda of the BJP that has been ongoing, since before Modi came to power in 2014.
Okay, and then the caste divisions or caste divisions have gotten worse under the BJP. Could you speak to this?
So, the BJP grounds itself in this ideology of Hindutva, which is a hierarchical structure that in many ways includes the caste system. It happens against the backdrop of the caste system. And to just speak on caste, caste wasn't just an issue when Modi came to power in 2014. Caste has been an issue for a very, very long time. And Professor Vijay Prashad says that caste, like race, is an unjust social hierarchy that is wretched. And of course, it's impossible to speak about caste without speaking about Dalits, the so-called untouchable class and a caste. And so under Modi's rule, we've seen increasing lynching of Dalits, we've seen increasing persecution and discrimination against Dalits. And we've seen in many ways the solidification of this unjust social hierarchy under Modi's government. But I think it is important in our analysis of caste to acknowledge that it was there before the BJP came to power in 2014.
Okay, and then the issue of Jammu and Kashmir is a contentious one which has rippled through both Indian and Pakistani politics over the course of decades. Under Modi's government, military troops have been deployed to the region and violence is ever increasing, affecting civilians. In light of the BJP's political stances, how do you imagine the issue of Jammu and Kashmir to pan out?
At the moment, as it is now, there are more than 500,000 soldiers enforcing a military occupation, one of the largest in the world, in Jammu and Kashmir. It's very difficult to say what direction it will go in. We can say what our hopes are, that ultimately the people of Jammu and Kashmir are afforded their right to self-determination. And what's currently going on in India, I suppose at some level the Indian government knows that what they're doing in Jammu and Kashmir is a blatant and systemic violation of human rights because of the fact that they've completely cut Jammu and Kashmir out from the outside world. There's been a continuing internet blockade, and this this covers up the lynching and the maiming and the enforced disappearances that are currently happening in Jammu and Kashmir and remain commonplace now. So Jammu and Kashmir is definitely an issue that is ongoing and difficult to predict. But at this point, we can only express our hopes for what we hope would happen in Jammu and Kashmir, which is ultimately the self-determination of the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
Okay, and then the 3 farm laws, which were passed last year, are currently being repealed by farmers across the subcontinental state. What exactly did these laws stipulate?
So together, these 3 farm laws deregulate the agriculture sector in India and allows it opens up the agriculture sector to the free market system. And in this system, small-scale farmers have very little buying power. And so the farmers fear that large corporations will move in and exploit the situation to buy produce from them at a lower price than they would have been previously guaranteed by the state. So previously, the current state, before the agriculture laws were passed, was that produce was sold at the state-regulated markets called mandis. And so the new legislation will dismantle these state-regulated markets in favor of a free market system that would allow corporations to come in and exploit the situation. And we need to keep in mind the fact that many of these farmers already live in poverty. There's a suicide crisis in India among farmers and in the agriculture sector. And of course, this has all been made worse by COVID in the past year or so. So this is all happening against the backdrop of people becoming more vulnerable, people becoming poorer, people having their material conditions deteriorate. And on top of this, now we have these 3 new agriculture laws that will further alienate and further indignify people working in the agriculture sector in India and small-scale farmers in India.
Okay, and then in response to these farm laws, farmers have begun to organize mass-scale protests and rallies across India, including one which coincided with India's 73rd Republic Day and was then branded Tractor Day. Protests and rallies have been marred by violence, and in one instance, the police even clamped down on protesting farmers. Can you tell us where these protests have been held and what effects they've had both on the farmers and on the national government?
So on the 26th of November last year, there was a one-day national strike called, and that's where the number of 250 million, which is approximately the number of people on strike in India, comes from, is that day. And so an alliance of national trade union federations called a nationwide strike, and that converged with the march on New Delhi by the striking farmers. So a united front of over 250 farmer organizations called the March on Delhi on the 26th of November. Since then, farmers have been camping on the outskirts of Delhi, and have said that they will not return home until the laws are repealed entirely. On Republic Day last week, farmers marched into Delhi to hold their own Republic Day parade, and some farmers stormed the Red Fort, and we had this, the farmers, their tactic at the moment, and a few days ago farmers went on hunger strike as well, has been largely peaceful. And we've seen a violent crackdown by Modi and his government against the farmers. But it's important to remember that in the context of this, so the farmers are camping on the outskirts of Delhi. They were supposed to march on the Indian Parliament earlier this week, yesterday, for the budget announcement, but that was called off following the violence of last week on Republic Day. So they are using what we could broadly call so-called Gandhian tactics. And so what Arundhati Roy says, she spoke about it in the context of the Maoists in India, is that these so-called Gandhian tactics only work when the cameras are rolling. And so I think as internationalists, part of our duty is to keep the camera focused on India. And I think that's what we need to be doing now. The protest is continuing. The farmers are still camped in the outskirts of Delhi, and they have embarked on hunger strikes as well.
Okay, and then lastly, what has the action of Modi and the BJP looked like in response to these repeals, protests, and rallies? And do you believe that an amiable conclusion can be reached?
So the Modi government has been obstinate and arrogant on this. They believe that they can, deplete the revolutionary energy that has come to the fore with these farmer protests. And I genuinely think that they're mistaken. I think the resolve of the farmers, outside in the biting cold, refusing to go home, is something that the Modi government is underestimating, and they are holding their line, and they are saying that that these laws will ultimately benefit farmers. They have consulted no experts whatsoever, and they have definitely not consulted the farmers in passing this legislation. But I think in pushing the Modi government, because the Modi government does need to be pushed now, there is a huge role to be played by international solidarity. And that's why, as South Africans Against Fascist India, we're currently calling on the South African government to back the demands of the farmers. So the demands of the farmers are twofold. They are linked. One is the complete repeal of the 3 neoliberal agriculture laws. And the second is the establishment of a guaranteed minimum support price on produce from the state. And so we're calling on the South African government to express its solidarity with the striking farmers in India by publicly backing its demands. And so in line with this, we are currently gathering endorsements on an organizational endorsements on a statement calling for the government to take this stance. And we are within this week, we will be releasing a public petition carrying the same demand, calling on the Department of International Relations and Cooperation to take this stance, because I don't think that the Modi government will move if it isn't pushed.
Thank you so much for joining us today and for that discussion about fascism and farm laws in India.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
That was Raees Noorbhai, activist, writer, and organizer with South Africans Against Fascist India, talking to us about the rise of fascism and the repeal of farm laws in India. And that brings us to the end of this afternoon's show. Remember that this segment can be found on our Facebook and Twitter pages. From myself, Humairaa Mayet, and the team at Salam Media, thank you for tuning in. Until next week, Tuesday, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon.